Let's start off, just if you could tell the story of Warby Parker, because no one can tell it quite like you do, from idea to launch.
Sure. So I think the best businesses solve problems. You guys have all started businesses that solve real problems. For us, we were trying to solve our own problem where it was frustrating going into an optical shop, getting excited about a pair of glasses, and walking out feeling like somebody had punched you in the stomach because the prices were so expensive. I was in business school at the time with my co-founders, Jeff, Andy, and Dave. And before business school, I had run a nonprofit social enterprise called Vision Spring, in which we would train low-income women in the developing world to start their own businesses, giving vision screenings and selling glasses in their communities around the world, primarily in India and Bangladesh, Ghana, parts of Central America. And one thing that I learned there was just the power of a pair of glasses to transform someone's life, and the intersection of fashion and health, because this is one of the few products that are indeed a fashion accessory and a health product. And I learned a little bit about sourcing and a little bit about eyewear design. So I sort of joke around that this was like the Warby Parker is a perfect business for me, giving my background, but we sort of started with this idea, hey, what if we could sell glasses for a fraction of what they would typically cost? Our idea was to initially sell glasses for $45 and provide the quality of a $500 pair of glasses. And the great thing about starting a business in business school is that you can immediately go to classmates and to professors and ask for their opinions. And at one point we went to the head of the marketing department at Wharton, and we had this beautiful PowerPoint presentation, and we go to the professor, Professor Raju, and said, hey, we're going to transform the optical industry. We're going to charge $45 for a $500 pair of glasses. And he kind of just smiled and said, I don't think that's going to work. And we're like, wait, look at we have this amazing PowerPoint. You have to see, look, we have graphs. The graphs go up and to the right. And he politely sort of slid the deck back to us and said, hey, you may believe that this $45 product is as good as a $500 product, but price is the biggest indicator of quality, and the public will not believe that's the case. And whatever you think your cost of goods are, it's probably going to be much higher, and then you're going to have no gross margin to run your business, no gross margin to market with, and even if you do pull it off, nobody would know that you existed. And as I'm sure all of you have experienced, in this entrepreneurial journey of peaks and valleys of feeling really smart and feeling really stupid, that was one of those moments where we walked out with our head down and revisited the whole pricing model. But long story short, we started working on it winter 2008, launched in February 2010. We're really fortunate to be featured in Vogue and GQ, which really helped catapult the business forward. Fast forward to today, we now have a really robust online business, which was the primary idea, but we've also gone into bricks and mortar. We have 88 stores across the country and in Canada. We now have over 1,800 people working for us. And one of the things that was really important to us was to help provide vision to everybody that needs corrective vision. So for every pair of glasses we sell, we distribute one to someone in need. And we've now distributed almost 5 million pairs of glasses to people around the world. So thank you.
So I have a lot of questions about the branding part of it and your strategy part, but just stepping way back. So you have a successful company. You've managed to disrupt the eyewear industry by coming up with this online good price point model. Scale up, but now you're opening brick and mortar stores. So are you deviating off the original mission, or how do you see it as additive and growth? How does it go back to the original strategy?
So I think if we always only listened to investors, we never would have opened up stores, right? And we would be in a pickle right now, or at least just not at the scale we are. But what we've tried to always do is listen to our customers and just create the best experience possible for our customers. So the idea originally to sell glasses online was because that enabled us to have a direct relationship with our customers and enabled us to cut out the middleman, so we never had to wholesale our product, so we could bring the price down from $500 to $95 because there wasn't another person marking up those glasses. So the idea of us opening up our own stores actually didn't seem that foreign to us because we were still having the direct relationship with our customers. And we initially just listened to our customers. So what happened when we launched and we had this great press, we had this home try-on program, which we still have today. You select 5 frames, we ship it to you free of cost. You have 5 days to try it on at home. And then if there's a pair you want, we send you sort of that fully made pair of glasses. And again, that was because we were listening to customers before we launched, doing focus groups and other things where people told us, hey, I don't know if I'd buy glasses online without trying them on first. I want to touch, I want to feel them. So that's why we had the home try-on program. But when we were featured in Vogue and GQ, sales went crazy in our first couple of days, and a lot of people ordered home try-ons, so we ran out of inventory and had to temporarily shut down our home try-on program. And people started asking, hey, they'd call up and say, hey, I've tried to do a home try-on, but I can't. Do you have an office that we can come in and try on your glasses? And we didn't. We were working out of my apartment at the time, but we invited a few people to come to my apartment to literally try on glasses. And I think like a lot of things that we do is we try and test something small to de-risk it. So we invited 5 people to my apartment under the thought process that, hey, we could probably learn something with 5 people. And if this is such a weird experience that it turns people off,
Kind of creepy there in your apartment.
oh yeah, it's like going into some random person's apartment to try on discounted glasses. Like, so our thought was like, hey, if we destroy our reputation with 5 people, at least it's only 5 people. So these first 5 people came in. We put the glasses on the dining room table. We moved a mirror so people could use those. We had people check out on our laptop, which was just using the website effectively. And people loved it. And then they started telling their friends. And so we were like, oh, well, let's continue this out of my apartment. And then eventually when we opened our first office, we did that. We deliberately selected an office location that was easily accessible by public transportation. For those that know New York well, right on 16th Street and Union Square West, in a loft-style office with southern-facing windows, so it had good light, which is super important for selling glasses. And then suddenly we were selling a couple $1 million worth of glasses out of the 4th floor of a non-retail building. That gave us the confidence to then do a pop-up shop. That worked really well. Then we decided to do sort of longer-term stores. Those started doing well. We then always had this marketing idea of going cross-country in a van. So we bought an old yellow school bus. We ripped out the interior and put these beautiful oak shelves in it, and we called it the Warby Parker Class Trip, because there's always been that tie between vision and learning and reading and this literary aspect. So we thought sort of the academic tie made sense with the yellow school bus. We went to over 15 different cities. In each city, we were in 2 to 3 locations of different curb lanes. So at the end of this sort of class trip, we also had sales figures for all these different locations. So we were like, oh, why don't we open up stores where we performed the best with the bus. So then our thought was maybe we'll open 5 stores, and then those were doing well. So we're like, oh, maybe we'll have like 25 stores, and then those were doing really well. And now we think we're going to probably have several hundred.
But the price point of opening, I mean, you have one right downstairs at Rockefeller Center, right? The price point of having to carry that real estate cost and the overhead of that versus the business model, which you originally went into, which is it's all online, keep your costs down. How did that change the equation of your business strategy?
So, we looked at it in a spreadsheet, and I think a lot of people underestimate the costs of a good e-commerce business, right? The engineering support that you need, the amount of UX design and product management to be constantly making that experience as seamless as possible, shipping costs, but probably most importantly, online acquisition. And I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here on how much money we all spend on Facebook. I think the difference between a lot of online marketing and more traditional marketing is that they're not economies of scale. The more that you tend to spend on Facebook, for example, the higher your CPA is because of the way that the algorithms are designed, and you start to reach audiences that look less and less like your initial customer. You have to spend more to go after them, whereas advertising on TV or an outdoor media, the more you spend, the cheaper it gets. So one of the things that when we were starting we didn't fully appreciate was how stores were also these great awareness drivers because people walk by the stores constantly. One could think of rent as just as a marketing cost. And we deliberately selected locations that were pretty high traffic. We would select locations where we could put a great facade and use public art. We would commission art that we would get a ton of attention around. So for example, our store in Abbot Kinney in Venice Beach, we actually even redesigned the roof line of the building that we're in, so we could put a giant mural that has now become a big part of the community there, or in Hayes Valley in San Francisco, or even here in Rock Center. We're in this amazing historical Art Deco building right across the street from Radio City. In Radio City, there's a bunch of murals by Stuart Davis. We went to the estate of Stuart Davis and got them to give us permission to put giant Stuart Davis murals in the store that hopefully garner attention from people walking by.
Well, and this goes back to where I was originally going to launch off from your startup story. You are so focused on branding and marketing. And that, as I watched every interview you've done and read all about you, it always comes back to that. I'm not shocked to hear you say the real estate cost of Rockefeller Center is a marketing cost. It's not the real estate overhead. But can you speak to that a little bit, how you prioritized at the beginning the branding strategy? I mean, one anecdote I read about Neil was that when they were starting up, you had no technology background really, right? And interviewed 3 IT companies and 40 PR companies. So just walk through how you've balanced that as you've launched the company.
Yeah, that was probably an imbalance because the first dev shop we hired to build our first website, we had to fire, so we probably should have interviewed more people then. We believe that a brand is a reason for being, and our branding strategy is our business strategy. So, what's our brand? Our brand is to provide vision to the world. It's to provide beautiful designer eyewear at a revolutionary price. And we spent basically a year and a half leading up to the launch, putting together our brand book, so our brand architecture, thinking through naming, visual identity. When I was at that nonprofit Vision Spring before business school, I had been through a rebranding process. I had worked at, Vision Spring was originally called Scojo Foundation, and a branding agency out of London called What If led that rebranding, and I remembered all the exercises that we did, so I would help facilitate facilitate those with my co-founders, and we would sit in rooms and we would do exercises like, hey, what are we, what aren't we? And we would debate words like preppy versus collegiate, and what are the nuances of those. We would put together mood boards, and on our very first mood board was a blue-footed booby. And a blue-footed booby, right, is a bird that is primarily found in the Galapagos. So if we want to create this global brand that was about learning and growing, the fact that, we're going to have this obscure bird, also a bird that has a quizzical look on its face because it's curious, and we're all about, right, vision, reading, learning, that it's a bird that's also pretty fashionable, right? It's kind of like a penguin in that it has a tuxedo, but when you pan down, it has these bright blue webbed feet. And one of our core values is to inject fun and quirkiness into everything that we do. And even putting those images on the mood board led us to being able to articulate what our core values are. And again, that's all core to the brand. So when we're, and those core values impact everything that we do. When we're thinking about business strategies, that align with our core values. When we're hiring or firing somebody, is it aligned with our core values?
And you have a really interesting order that I hear you mention over and over again. First is fashion, then price, and then social mission. And can you speak to a little bit about why social mission is third, even though it's something so core?
So one thing that, as we were sort of developing the brand, we were doing a lot of research on our customer and on behaviors around buying glasses. Right, it is a fashion accessory, and the vast majority of people that we would interview, survey, have in focus groups, right, the thing that they cared most about is, how does this pair of glasses look on my face? Then they would talk about, well, how much do they cost? Then, oh, what is it made out of? Is this quality? And those are pretty much the only questions that people would have for the most part. So if that's how we believe customers behave, or at least the customers we want to target, then we should lead with what they care about most first, which is design and fashion, and then with price, and then with quality and service, and then lastly, if at all, our social mission, because we don't think that the social mission is actually going to cause someone to purchase the pair of glasses. What we've later learned is, and this is not that surprising because it's the reason why we've had a strong social mission from day one, is right, what was going to motivate us to be at the company every day. It's the number one reason why people come and join Warby Parker. So often we have different messaging hierarchies depending on which stakeholders we're talking to. So for the vast majority of our customers, it's fashion first, then price. For employees that we're trying to hire, it's social mission first.
And on the topic of scaling and as it relates to social mission, you just launched a new project with New York City Schools, which is an example of also being able to scale up at a later stage in the business. Can you talk us through that?
Sure. So really exciting. Yesterday, we were at Mayor de Blasio's State of the City address, and we've been working with him on scaling a program that we have in New York City to go into New York City public schools, provide free exams and glasses. And we've been doing it in about 227 schools. And just yesterday, we made the announcement that we are going to provide free eye exams and free glasses to every kindergartner and first grader in New York City public schools. So,
but you couldn't have done that at the beginning.
We couldn't have done it. No way could we have done it at the beginning for a few reasons, right? One is that we didn't have the cash to be able to do it. We didn't have the timing or even the expertise. Like with all things, start small, continue to build incrementally.
And then just tactically speaking, the biggest mistake you made as you were trying to grow?
I think there were many. Sometimes underestimating the level of expertise in sort of the incumbent businesses that we're trying to beat or disrupt. I'm not a big fan of the word disrupt, but an example, as we start to open up stores, I wish that we had hired more senior construction managers and leadership early on. Right, that's construction can be a little bit of a black box. Right, sometimes felt like we were often had a bias towards, oh, we can figure this out on our own. Being naive is a great thing, and to some extent, I believe naivete is a good thing because you look at something with fresh eyes and ask questions. Oh, why is it done this way? Can we do it slightly differently? But I think there are certain roles within the business that I wish we had hired more expertise early on. Another area would be within talent and people in HR, particularly around sort of comp and benefits. Another area probably around performance marketing, right? Just in how much money we end up spending in that area.
And we talked a little bit on the phone, what was the area where you had no expertise and how did you compensate for that, right? You can have a great idea, you can have the fundamentals of a great business, but you're always going to have a blind spot. So what was your blind spot and how did you work your way around that?
So there were many, many blind spots, one around technology, and we just tried to speak with as many people that we knew that either worked at tech companies or had started tech companies. When we were interviewing for our first CTO, we felt like we could interview effectively for leadership and perhaps desire to be at Warby Parker, but we certainly had no background to be able to screen for someone's technical ability. We were able to get one of our investors to get sort of the CTO at another portfolio company to do a technical screen for our CTO candidate. So that was super helpful to sort of leverage advisors when we didn't have expertise. That was probably one of the biggest ones.
And I mean, a lot of this goes back to being relentlessly aligned to your strategy, right, in all of your decision making. But as you're growing, and I think this is part of the risk of opening the brick and mortar stores, maybe or maybe not, is how do you resist the temptation to chase incremental customers and grow at the risk of staying aligned to your core strategy and the thing that made you successful in the first place?
That's a tough one. We had received some good advice early on from Patty McCord, who's a former head of HR of Netflix, and she described strategy as what you say no to. We constantly had to remind ourselves, this is eyes on the prize, let's focus here. There's a lot of shiny objects along the way. If we pick up every shiny object, we'll never get to the pot of gold. And we had good traction in that the core product and the core business and our core assumptions were generally proving out. I think often sometimes people start to, I guess, go off script a little bit from a strategy perspective to chase growth in certain areas. One of the things that we see a lot, especially in some of these direct-to-consumer brands, is immediately go international, for example, because they're concerned that there are copycats out there. One of some advice that we had also received is that complexity is often the enemy of any business and of any process. Going international introduces a lot of complexity into the business. And it's not that you shouldn't do it, but it's just you need to understand that that's going to require a lot of mind share of senior leadership. So are you prepared to make that sort of commitment?
All right, let's open it up to you guys. Any questions for Neil? Here. That's all right. I want everybody here.
Hi, I'm Sheree Robinson, founder of Tastemakers Africa and avid fan of Warby Parker.
Thank you.
Specifically, your customer experience. And I just wanted, we are an experiences platform, so customer experience is what we do. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about, your journey to delivering such a high quality customer experience, both in store and online at Warby Parker, and if there are any sort of 3 seeds or nuggets you can drop to like how to keep that consistent as you grow.
So we spend a lot of time trying to measure that customer experience using Net Promoter Score. We had two of my co-founders had worked at Bain and Company, and Bain and Company is known for doing everything according to Net Promoter Score. So it was ingrained in us from day one. And right, it's a measure of customer satisfaction, where you ask how likely are you to refer this product or service to a friend. And so from day one, we were asking that question of our customers. So we were able to track general customer satisfaction over time. And if there were ever dips, we could sort of dig in and as to why. And now we've just gotten a lot more sophisticated on how we measure that customer satisfaction over different periods of time, because we also know that people care about different aspects of the experience differently. So for example, within a week of buying someone's pair of glasses, shipping time is super important to them. But 6 months, 12 months later, they forget, they don't care about that shipping time. They care, do my lenses smudge? How do the glasses stand up over time? So spend a lot of time measuring that customer experience. Now that we have stores, we've created what we call the retail experience score, where we hit folks with surveys within 24 hours of visiting a store. So that way we're really evaluating that in-store experience versus the product experience, because most people in our product, it's customized. So someone places an order in a store, for example, we still have to make it and send it to them. So we are able to survey them before they actually get the product. We also have what we call an optician experience score. So if somebody goes in our store and goes to see an optician and gets an adjustment, we hit them with a survey around that. If they have an eye exam, and I'm just using these as examples of it, we try and break down every piece of the customer journey and figure out how do we measure it, how can we do it better. We also are constantly examining what our competitors are doing to understand, hey, are they doing stuff better or worse than us? And try and also measure some of their experiences.
Well,
Yes.
go ahead. Here it comes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming today. This is awesome. Love y'all's roadmap. My name is B. Arthur. I'm the founder and CEO of The Difference. And a lot of what we want to do is democratize access to therapy, psychotherapy. But just like you said, investors don't always have the best advice. And when you see this with a lot of consumer products, it's really important to me that there's an affordable consumer option for therapy. But all my investors keep saying, you're going to have to pivot to enterprise. You're going to have to pivot to, health insurance. How did you get to stay pure consumer in CPG?
I think we were at an advantage in when we launched in 2010, we were able to launch actually without raising any outside capital because this was before Facebook had monetized. So we didn't remember when you're trying to get likes on a fan page. So we didn't need to raise a lot of capital in the beginning from a marketing perspective. We did a lot of things ourselves, like UX design, wireframes of the website in PowerPoint, and then took those to a graphic designer and said, hey, please make this pretty, and then take it to a web developer to build. And so by the time we were raising capital, we were able to show that we do have a lot of customers already, and we're able to reach them directly. Now, something that's a little more probably comparable is that most Americans buy their glasses with vision insurance. So sort of the equivalent of enterprise selling is for us to go in network with a lot of vision insurance companies. The challenge for us is that the two largest vision insurance companies don't want to work with us because one, was a nonprofit originally designed to protect the interests of eye doctors. They've now lost their tax-exempt status because they're really run as a for-profit company. They bought a frame company and reimburse higher rates if you sell their own frames. The other one, iMed, is owned by Luxottica, which is the 800-pound gorilla in the eyewear industry. They own Oakley, Ray-Ban, Oliver Peoples, Persol, Arnett, LensCrafters, Pearle Vision, Sunglass Hut. They license all the big brands.
And they're an insurer?
And they're insured.
scam, though.
So that service scam. So we've now been thinking, okay, well, should we create our own insurance product? Okay, well, then we go back to the drawing board. Why do people get insurance? What do they look for? Well, to have a good insurance product, then we have to provide a holistic suite of services, not just prescription glasses and sunglasses, but eye exams and contact lenses, because that's really important to insurance customers. So I think as investors ask questions or make recommendations, we always made sure that we were listening to them and then asking questions to try and understand what was behind it, and then trying to always have answers for them as to, hey, this is why we don't think it makes sense, or this is why we think it makes sense eventually. And then, of course, just trying to meet with as many investors as possible. And I think your next panel is probably, this will be a great question for them. But if there were certain themes that kept emerging from investors, that was something that we would spend more time trying to make sure that we had a really coherent answer. Because, right, capital is such it's the lifeblood of a company.
Go ahead.
Thank you. You had mentioned, Neil, that there's a pre-Facebook monetizing, and then there's the post-Facebook monetizing strategy. And also, when you first launched, you were able to get the brand into Vogue and GQ, and this really was a pivotal moment. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, for today, would the same things, in your opinion, apply? And if not, what would be the next best strategy?
So I think in the past, big watershed moments you could count on a little bit more to have big marketing impact. So the launch of a collection, the launch of a new business. And Janelle probably could speak about this a lot more, but what we're seeing is with fragmentation of media, with people consuming media in small bite-sized pieces, we believe sort of more is more. So you don't know necessarily what's going to hit and if something's going to hit big, so you got to do a million different things and constantly test and iterate and change things. And that goes from like ad creative. So, I think when we were starting out, if we had an ad on Facebook, maybe it would last several months and still be effective. Now it's more like several weeks, and depending on how much money we throw at it, we might need to be changing that even more frequently. But we always, whenever we do something, we have a checklist, and it's things like, hey, how does this impact our stakeholders? Does this align with our core values? Is this newsworthy and something that people would want to talk about at the dinner table? Is it unexpected? And lastly, and this is sort of tied to that last question, like, is there a story behind it that we can tell in pretty short order through these different mediums? So if you only have 10 to 15 seconds to tell a story, how is something simple and easily digestible? We're now running a bunch of TV ads, and we've tested 60-second spots, 30-second spots, 15-second spots, and we're doing both on sort of linear TV and streaming TV. And one of the things that we've been finding is actually 2 15-second spots together are more effective than one 30-second spot, which is interesting and probably not a rule that holds true for everyone, but it's just an example of how things are moving faster, and shorter bite-sized pieces perhaps have a bigger impact over the long run.
I've been getting the rap, so I will try and honor that because your most important panel is coming up next, right? The money is following us. So thank you to Neil, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.